if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to go ahead and get started with sort of the introductions here and walk through how to use the Zoom webinar. I'm sure most of you already know by now after everything that's been happening, and we've been having a lot more of these types of meetings and training sessions online, but just in case. So obviously most of us have figured out the chat already, which is great. There's also a Q&A. So if you have a very specific question for Lee, you can put it in the Q&A there. So if you aren't too familiar with Zoom, I don't know about for you, but on my Mac, I just kind of put my my mouse to the top of the screen, and then a little menu bar pops down, and then there's a Q&A button there. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation you want to ask Lee Murphy there, you can put it in the Q&A. If you do it in the chat, I will try to look at both and see if I can keep track of the questions in the chat, but let's try to keep specific questions in the Q&A, and Lee and I can address those questions at the end there. So, and we're good. You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just had a notification saying I had an unstable internet connection, which is the last thing you want to see as you start a presentation. But anyway, so welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I think we have 25 participants right now, which is awesome. Such a good turnout. Thank you everybody for registering. I don't know why you wouldn't, because Lee is an amazing guy and he's got a lot to say and he's a very smart man. So I'm really excited to hear what he has to say to you guys today. But before we get started with that, I just want to let you guys all know. So this is going to be a series of online talks that we're gonna start to do, because obviously a lot of things are going online now with COVID. So today we're talking prospecting, so sales and prospecting specific to the sign industry with Lee Murphy of Access Signs. So this is actually a partnership presentation between YPN and SAC. So if you don't know what YPN is, where have you been? But basically, YPN is the Young Professional Network. It is a group within the Sign Association of Canada, and it's for young people in the sign industry from all different areas in the sign industry. We have people in sales, we have people in manufacturing, we have people in print, graphic design, anybody who is related to the sign industry. So we have lots of networking opportunities. We do events. Even throughout all this, we're still doing awesome events. We have a weekly Zoom chat with everybody, and they're very great chats. We have an ongoing WhatsApp chat with all the YPN members, which is amazing. We can reach out anytime and get like advice or, you know, just rants, and it's really amazing. So education, resources, and then also mentorship. So it's a really great program. If you yourself are a young person in the sign industry and you're not already a part of this, I definitely encourage you to find out more. You can find information on the SAC website under resources. And if you are a business owner and you have young people that are working for your business and you think that they would be perfect, please direct them to the SAC website. And like I said, to the resources section, you can apply right on the website to become a part of YPN. So. And then also you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. So our Instagram is very, very active. We have lots of content, fresh content every day. Instagram stories from different members across the country, and resources and tools. And yeah, it's just an excellent resource. So even if you're not a part of YPN, follow us. It's awesome. That's my YPN. So just before we get started as well, I just want to remind everybody about Sign Association of Canada. So as a SAC member, you are also part of a multifaceted association. So if you're a tier 1, which is a sign manufacturing company, you are automatically a member of the ISA. And then also your regional chapters. So we have, you know, OSA, ASA, key, the regional chapters there. So just to remind you about that. And then the ISA, I do want to just focus on some of the resources that the ISA has available to you. So right now, just with everything that's going on, The ISA has just fantastic resources to help business owners, employees, with navigating everything that we're going through right now with COVID. So if you haven't had a chance to hop on the ISA website and check out their business resources, it's just an excellent source of information. Specifically like the revising your business section. There's just tons of tools in there for helping you prepare to get back to like some sort of normalcy in this industry. So there's lots of resources there. And like I said, it's updated daily. If you have been watching Lori's videos, they're available on social media as well. So I suggest you check that out. And then coming back to the SAC website and resources, we've updated the website to include a COVID-19 section under resources. So there as well, like lots of resources to help you with your business, and even just resources to help you navigate like going back to work and working with customers who are re-entering the workforce, and how to reboot your business and all that. So there's a lot of great stuff on there for you there. And then also just with everything that's going on, like I said, it's a great time as well to provide resources to your employees for training or yourself. So if you haven't taken advantage of the online learning on the ISA website, I highly recommend that you do. We have here at Signature Science, we have a education membership, and you know, whenever there's downtime or anything like that, I just do a little research, send some emails out to different staff and say, I really want you to do this training or check this out. And it's actually a very, very good resource. There is even an opportunity to get digital badges, which is great. So I can't speak highly enough about the online learning for ISA. So that is there. And then also just for Science Association of Canada, they are also on social media. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Really encourage you to, you know, look up your regional science association, see if they're on social media, follow them, contribute to the conversation, get engaged that way. There is really no easier way to get engaged with your local association than on social media, in my opinion. So and then finally, we have the mailing list. So we send out, the SAC sends out the newsletters, same as ISA. And if you are looking at these and you have no idea about this newsletter, email Tina Kendrick, SAC membership at science.org, and she will get you on those mailing lists. And I can add her contact information to the chat as well. So. Okay, so with that, we have Lee Murphy, who is not only a dear friend of mine, but also a very successful sign salesman from Quebec. And he's here to talk to you today about sales and prospecting in the sign industry. So if you don't mind, I'm just read off the screen for a second. But Lee Murphy is the Director of Business Development at Access Signs Inc. in Longueuil, sorry if I butchered that, Quebec. Having begun his career in the signage industry 14 years ago on the operations side, he transitioned into a sales role in 2012 and has been consulting on public and private sector projects throughout North America ever since. So Lee is involved in the sign industry at both the provincial and national levels, serving on the ACUALLY Provincial Board of Directors, as well as Vice President and co-vice president of the ACUALLY Provincial Board as Director, as Vice President, as well as co-vice president of the Young Professionals Network Board of Directors within the Sign Association of Canada. Sorry, it's a mouthful. Having been named to the ISA Elite Program in 2019, recognizing young industry leaders, Lee actively maintains relationships throughout the United States and Canada. Lee holds an operations degree from Queen's University Smith School of Business. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the controls over to my friend Lee here, if I can figure that out. Here we go. Okay, Lee, so you should have control of the screen now.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I want to start with thanking a few people. First and foremost, Emily from Signature Signs. I know she was very, very nervous about doing this today. She did an absolutely amazing job putting the slides together, as well as developing a ton of educational programs for the YPN. So thank you so much, Emily, for all the work you put into this. It's much appreciated. Corinne Eaton from the Sign Association, for providing this platform and their support. Jason Cramp from Sign Media. He just his coverage and support for his industry is unrivaled. I want to thank the Young Professionals Network, including the board made up of Matthew Lavery, Taylor Blanchett, Krista Edwards, Stacey Gagne, Shannon Summers, Bash Hamas, Emily again, and Mark Wallace. I also want to thank the company I work for, Access Signs, here in Longueuil, Quebec. You almost said Longueuil right. It was very close. My partner, Trista, for all of her support. It's not hard dating someone in the sign industry. And I want to thank all of you today for joining me, giving me an hour of your time. I understand how valuable your time is, and I'll do my absolute best not to waste it today. And before we move into the slides, I think it's important for me to mention I'm not an overly extroverted person. I was extremely shy my entire life. I couldn't look at someone in the face. When I would speak to them, I would look at the ground. I had absolutely no self-confidence. So I started my career in the sign industry on the operations side. I did operations for 6 years. As director of operations, I managed fabrication, installs, logistics, etc., for a company doing about 5 million in revenue yearly. I began feeling burnt out. I wasn't good at delegating. I did a lot myself, and I'm a transparent person. I wanted more money. The business owner said the only option for more money was transitioning into a sales role. The owner of the company said it would fail because I was shy. Like I don't bet, I don't gamble. The truth is, he was right. Sales in general is hard. You have to be outgoing, but until you become outgoing, the key at the beginning of your sales career is having the knowledge. So I succeeded at the beginning because I had experience in the shop, managing installs, managing logistics. The confidence comes with each deal, and as you learn with sales, etc. And we're going to discuss that later. But at the beginning of your sales career, the main takeaway is knowing what you're selling. Like you can get away with a lot and not having the confidence needed if you know what you're talking about, especially if you're in a younger demographic like myself. We'll transition into what the steps in a sales cycle are. So to start, you have prospecting, which is what we're going to go into today. We're going to focus on. Each of these steps could be a webinar in themselves. So we're going to focus on prospecting and possibly later do other webinars and the other topics. So prospecting, what is it? Finding clients. After you find the client, you have to connect and qualify. So you reach out, you introduce your company, their benefits. You move on to research, determine what kind of client they are, and tailor your effort accordingly. Present. So you submit a drawing and quote for a project on the go, you handle objections, discuss what their hesitations are after reviewing, close, you sign a contract, make the sale, communicate and continue to sell. This is generally the project management portion of the sale. So what is prospecting? The definition of prospecting is sales prospecting is a process of creating an opportunity to make a sale. This is the only place where the metric really isn't accurate in the sales process. You can measure the quantity of calls, the quantity of emails, the quantity of posts, but you can't really measure the quality because you can either do it really lazy or really well. And it's also the step of the process that takes the most energy with the least amount of immediate reward. It's like a long-term thing. So recently I was on a Zoom call. We have a weekly YPN Zoom call every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And now we're transitioning to topics. And a guest brought up the point of him having a hard time finding dedicated, driven, young salespeople who wouldn't go and pound the pavement and knock on doors, and they just wanted to do the Facebook thing, etc. So I had the chance of speaking to Francois Lucier. He's my idol, my sales idol in this industry. And he mentioned that he used to sell vacuum cleaners. I believe it was vacuum cleaners. It was at the bar. I had a few drinks. I think it was vacuum cleaners. That being said, when he transitioned to the sign industry, it made me think when he gave me the story of him selling vacuum cleaners of the door-to-door encyclopedia salesman that we always see when you think of door-to-door salesman. And what would that look like now? Before it was you'd walk to the door, knock, do you need encyclopedias? How do you get your information? Now it's online. And what would you do if you had to sell encyclopedias? You would make a site, dyson.ca, and you would say, here are my, vacuums, or here are my encyclopedias. They're great, buy them. That's the new door to door. And in order to knock on all the doors, you would put a budget on Google AdWords, Facebook ads. That's what it's become now. So what are the keys? There's 5 main things you have to think about when you talk about the success in prospecting: energy, your determination, your effort, consistency and diligence, and ongoing learning. Let's talk about energy first. So every day, my day looks, well, now it's different, it's a pandemic, but my day looks like I wake up at 4:30, I have a coffee, I go to the gym at 5 o'clock, I work out from 5 to 6. I then drive to my office. It's about 30 minutes. I listen to something educational or motivating, a podcast, a YouTube channel, book on tape, something where I can learn something, because I don't have that 30 minutes later on in the day. I definitely don't have it during the day. And in the evening, I try to dedicate it with my family. So I don't want to also then go into that time to learn something, because learning, as we'll get to see further in the presentation, is extremely important to success at sales. Your determination. So there are days where I don't feel like doing it, and that's normal. I think everyone's human. And I think that not wanting to do something every day is a normal thing. You have to tell yourself and convince yourself you have no choice. Tony Robbins is a great example for that. You go on YouTube, buy his book. He has a knack for getting people amped up when they think they have nothing left. And that's what you have to do for yourself. Because the truth is, no one's going to come into your office or come home and say, hey, listen, you need to be in a good mood. You have to do that from yourself. And your energy and your determination to have good energy attracts people. So we have Dale Carnegie. People want to buy things from people who are happy, who are positive. Positivity is infectious. Happiness is infectious. No one wants to deal with someone who's negative or just down. You need to, even if you don't feel it, you need to sell yourself on, I'm in a good mood. I will be in a good mood. I have to be in a good mood. When you talk about determination, a lot of times people think that if you try and you fail, I tried and I failed, it wasn't my fault. That's not true. If you tried and you tried and you tried and you tried and you failed, you did everything you could. But if you tried and you failed, you weren't determined. So I had a customer. I saw online that they were opening 400 locations throughout Canada. I reached out to that customer on LinkedIn. I said, hey, I sell signs, the exact type of sign you need for your store. I'd love to quote your signs. He told me, by all means, I'll add you to my list of vendors to quote. Nothing. A few weeks later, I reached out to a separate person in the company. Hey, I sell the type of signs you need. Yeah, I'll add you to the list. Blah, blah, blah. Nothing. This went on for a year. I didn't give up. They had a certain type of takeout box. This was a restaurant. So I went to the restaurant, one of the restaurants in the franchise, and I asked for a takeout box. They gave me one. I brought it home. I wrote a handwritten note in the takeout box. And I wrote, my signage is as healthy as your salads. I put it in the takeout box, and then I brought it to his office. And I left it with his receptionist. And nothing. Weeks later, I was at a client party. There was a 25th anniversary, and I had to check in on a list. I saw his name on the list. I went to the girl, can you please confirm if he's here? She said yes. They gave a speech, everyone clapped. I saw him in the corner. I went and introduced myself. Hey, I'm Lee Murphy. We've been speaking on LinkedIn. And the person he was with was like, what do you do? I told him I sell signs. He looked at me dead in the face and said, you sell signs? We're talking about signs for our stores right now. And if I wasn't persistent and determined, I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity. Effort. Grant Cardone has a book, 10X. Whatever effort you think it's going to take to sell something or to get a customer, it really takes 10 times that amount of effort. If you think sending an email, hi, my name is X, I work at X, you need this, you need to do that 10 times. You need to call that person 10 times before you're on the radar. You need to do way more than you actually really think it truly takes. Consistency. Prospecting must be done regularly, otherwise it's not going to be effective. It takes 21 days, to form a habit and 90 days for it to become part of your daily routine. You have to do it daily. And lastly, the most important part of this is ongoing learning. Read a book, listen to a podcast, watch a YouTube video, seek out mentorship from your peers. You must continue learning every day and dedicate a part of your day, to learning something. Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar. You need to be reading, you need to be learning in order to be successful. So what are your markets? Who are your clients? We have public versus private. What's a public client? Cities, hospitals, schools, fire stations, athletic centers, aquatic centers, libraries, anything government run, either federally, provincially, municipality, etc. Private, on the other hand, is retail chains, restaurants, offices, banks. We're going to talk about short, medium, and long term later in the presentation, but you have to tailor your energy according to the type of customer. So where do you prospect and how do you prospect? You have online and offline. Online's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, if anyone uses that, your website. Which of those platforms are best? Whichever people are on. Whichever people are on and active on. If it's Facebook, post on Facebook. If it's LinkedIn, post on LinkedIn. If you're not lazy, post on all of them. Give yourself the best opportunity to succeed. Offline, cocktails, networking breakfasts, chamber of commerce meetings, drinks with dinners and drinks and dinners with friends. So I know a ton of people who don't tell everyone that they interact with what they do. I get a haircut. I tell my barber I sell signs. I go to the gym. I tell the person at the counter I sell signs. I eat at a restaurant. I ask where they bought their sign. Every time you meet someone, work it into the conversation. Which is better, online, offline? You need to do both. You absolutely have to do both. People can't buy from you if they don't know who you are or what you do. Tell everyone you know who you are and what you do. Types of prospecting, you have two, targeted and non-targeted. So targeted, what is targeted? It's something directed towards people who purchase signage, building owners, construction companies, VPs of business development. What's non-targeted? Everyone and their grandmother. They don't buy signs, who cares? Make sure they know you sell signs. And how can you achieve both of these? Online, post content, post it daily. Offline, tell everyone you know to tell their friends, their friend Lee Murphy, sell signs. If you need a sign, Lee Murphy is the person to call signs. Matthew Laver is the person who sells signs. Alexandria Sampson is the person who sells signs. You tell everyone you know what you do so that all of those people tell everyone they know what you do. So what are the types of prospects? There's four. There's cold, targeted cold, warm, and hot. We'll start with cold. So cold prospects are brand new. They know nothing about you and you know nothing about them. You should give these the least amount of effort. This is normally passive content. Photos on LinkedIn, photos on Instagram, photos on Facebook, etc. Targeted cold. So this is where good salesmen see the most success as they have the most control over the entire experience. There's no previous experience with your company or someone they know that bought something. Unfortunately, this type of prospect requires the most effort. Warm prospects. This is the easiest type of prospect, but the most dangerous. They're basically yours to lose. I love the show Mad Men. I love Don Draper. And he said, the day you sign a client is the day you begin losing them. And if you get comfortable and tell yourself that the sale is done because they've already bought from you, you're going to fail. Your commitment level with this type of prospect, it must be the same as their previous experience with you. So hot. These are people who contact you after seeing your sign or seeing your install truck somewhere in the city. This is the easiest type of prospect in general. The energy here should be completely focused on the pitch. You're drawing, great quote, make it quick, make it easy. The owner of my company, Tammy Dirksen, likes to say cheap and cheerful. This is definitely the cheap and cheerful type of prospect. So what are the classes of prospects? You have short-term, medium-term, and long-term. So short-term, how do you prospect with this type of customer? It's easy, post every day. This is for the small business owners, who may be looking for a sign for their cafe. When you think about medium, you want to dedicate a part of your week to look for mid-level clients. Clients with a few locations, looking to possibly open a few more. They're generally regional type businesses, specific to your area or province. And long-term, it's imperative for you to come up with a plan for this type of prospect. You need to block off a portion of your schedule for these and give them your undivided attention. I normally put a 1 hour block in my calendar. It's Tuesday at 8 a.m. every week without fail to just plant seeds. This is targeted prospecting, and I look for companies expanding nationally throughout North America, companies with national locations, who said, oh, we're going to open 40 locations in Quebec, because that gives me the opportunity to impress them locally and then take over the national business. So active prospecting versus passive prospecting. Like an income, you must have both to maximize success. You absolutely need both. You need to be actively looking for clients both online and offline, while passively getting referrals and calls from friends of friends or friends of clients who need something. I think, like, while I'm on LinkedIn, I'm looking for the buyer of Nike. Like Nike's going to open 100 stores next year. I want to find the guy who buys the signs. While I'm looking for the sign buyer for Nike, some random person posts on Facebook, does anyone know someone who makes signs? And 4 of my Facebook friends say, Lee Murphy, Lee Murphy, Lee Murphy. 3 of those people I don't even personally know. Think of how many more people that you can reach by taking advantage of both. And I would have literally had to double my effort, by scanning both at the same time over and over again. I wouldn't have even seen the post because I don't know that person. And the only reason my name was mentioned is because I was promoting my brand, which we're going to get into shortly. Prospecting has no schedule. It must be daily. It must be mostly active. I've asked a ton of sales reps how they get clients, how long it takes. And these are women and men selling $10, $20 million. And it's not even just in the sign industry, it's every industry. This is going to sound real discouraging. I'm real sorry. To get a really good client, the reality is it normally takes like 18 months, maybe even 2 years. You need to bang on doors daily. You need to find someone who knows someone who lives there, bang on their door and say, hey, can you bang on his door? And find a way to get that person to open the door. And the only reason that salespeople in general see prospecting as like the brutal part of the process is because there's no immediate result. And it's not always evident, and it always takes forever. You need to have that honest conversation with yourself, because if you don't, you're going to give up. And prospecting truly is the key to success. Your visibility, your brand. People need to know who you are, what you do, in order to buy a sign from you. At the end of the day, someone once said, you don't have to be the best. You have to be the best known. So your signs don't have to be better than X or better than Y, but everyone needs to know that you're an option. You always need to be an option. And Gary Vaynerchuk has a book called Crushing It, and it's full with experiences of people who focused on their brand, who they are, and the success that they've had as it came. And he's a great example of that. This is something I believe strongly in. And I've gone to meetings and I've had people say to me, I didn't even know where you worked, but I saw your photos and I like this type of sign. You don't need a logo at the end of the day, but you need to build a brand both online and offline. so your presence feels like a brand. And I do so by being involved at the provincial and national levels, doing YouTube channels, attending events, etc. But the reason my brand has become well known is because I tied it into who I am authentically. Like I love my daughter and family. I like all black cars. I drive a sport bike, but I sell signs and I love it. And I'm confident my signs are great quality. You need to be authentic all the time and without, fail. You have to tell everyone you sell signs, and it has to become part of who you are. The best success comes from providing value with every interaction, not just when you actually sell your signage or installation service. The key takeaway is you need a roadmap. My girlfriend and many other people asked me if I was nervous for today. I said no. Like they asked me why. And every time I start a project, meet a client, I do everything I can to give my company the chance to win. Prospecting should be no different. If you sit and you prepare and you polish your image, you make sure your image is everywhere, you research the needs of the company, you create the best possible environment for success. I mean, there's the odd time the person doesn't like your face. They don't like that you're a woman, maybe. They don't like that you speak English or French or whatever province you're in. You have no control over that. But the things you do have control over, create a plan, positive attitude, and persistence, and 100% you will see success at some point. So in conclusion, I want to thank each of you for joining me today. I hope some of you found one or two things that were of value, and I appreciate you all joining.
Okay, so that was amazing. We do have a question over here, and I just want to remind everybody that there is a Q&A section that you can type your questions in there. I've also been typing up the books as Lee was saying them in the chat as well. So we do have a question here from from Richard. Lee, when you get the brush off from a customer saying that decisions on buying signs are all done at the head office, what's your strategy to get to the right person at head office?
So I had LinkedIn Premium for about a year last year. I would encourage anyone who has the budget, I believe it's $800, to purchase it. Basically, what I do is I go on and I research who the director of purchasing or construction is for that company. Generally, at larger companies, there's 67, 100 people who work there. So I try to find the exact person, send them a friend request. I do not ask them to purchase signs. I leave it be for a week, and then I share a piece of content that I believe they would like. Once they like it, I would then open the conversation, or once they add me as a friend on LinkedIn, I go to see if we have any mutual friends in common, and then I write to someone I know in common and say, hey, listen, can you make an introduction to Max over at Nike? And that way, when I do speak to the person, I can say, hey, I know Max from blah, blah, blah. And it's not, you're not a stranger anymore. You've broken down their hesitation and their objection, because now they feel like they're dealing with someone that's vetted, that they know.
Perfect, thank you. So we have another question from Alexandria. So did you ever have a mentor in the sign industry to lead you in sales?
That's a great question, actually. Thank you so much, Alexandria. I did. So I had a mentor for 11 years who took me from not knowing anything about sales to showing me what the process is, to showing me how you find customers. And he basically groomed me into loving it. And then I switched mentors, and then that mentor actually taught me what the metric was. So before, a lot of the times you hear when you're selling a lot, they say you're doing a great job. And then when the numbers aren't great, they say you're doing a bad job. But if you don't have a metric behind it, it gets very frustrating. So I used to say, well, I'm working just as hard, so why am I doing a bad job now than before? And this second mentor, when they explained to me, well, look, you could see how many projects you opened, how many projects you closed, what the monthly rate is, et cetera. Once I could see and quantify my effort, it made it a lot more clear. And then after that, outside of sales, it's basically just been people I idolize. So I take anything they say, Keith Edwards, Francois Lucier, anything they say, and basically try to incorporate it into my daily schedule.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Alexandria. So
Mhm.
we have a question from Matt. Lee, what do you feel is the next big thing in sales within the sign industry? What direction are we moving towards? Digital, 3D, printing?
I think it's going to be, well, I've had the opportunity on Channel Letters and Coffee to speak to a lot of people. A lot of people say it's going to be digital. It's going to be screens. I don't disagree, but I think it's going to take quite some time. I think that the future isn't going to be changing the product immediately. I think it's going to be the way you sell the product. So I think it's going to be how we're doing a Zoom meeting right now. It's going to be a lot of online presentations. Show how a product works. Show how it benefited that company. Why? Look at the visibility from the road. It's going to be a lot of online content, a lot of video online content.
Thanks, Matt. So we have another question from Taylor. What are some tips that you have for using LinkedIn for sales effectively?
Two completely different directions. The first one will be make as many friends as you can, even if they don't buy signs. So I have 23,000 LinkedIn connections. I know 100 of them, but 23,000 people will see when I post the sign picture. So like I mentioned, passive, there's no effort. I don't contact those people, but they see my content. The other portion is finding the exact person, directors of construction, purchasing. You want to go on LinkedIn? Just type in directors of construction, and it will show you the majority of the time retail chains, restaurants, big box stores, Walmart, Sobeys. It'll show you who the people are. So if you don't need to find the company necessarily, you just need to find the role, and that role will give you a list of people from different companies who then buy signs. So instead of focusing on the company, focus on the role, and then the leads are almost endless.
Thank you, Taylor. So we have another question from Paul. What percentage of your time is spent on following up on prospects, and how does that break down? How do you break that down by prospect type?
I do it weekly. So I have a list of first estimates I've sent that I've not sold. I go through those on a weekly basis. Like we'll say Friday. It's the easiest for me because it's the craziest day and I get an hour of my time out the way. Prospects who haven't bought anything or I haven't quoted anything yet. Large prospects, I take 1 hour a week. I do it on Tuesdays at 8 o'clock. Smaller prospects, I basically don't follow up with them. My follow-up is by posting a ton of content, making sure they remember me. Because if I would make a list and go through my spreadsheet, et cetera, of all the people, it'd be a lot, and I think that I try to focus the majority of my time, an hour for large ones, Fridays for follow-ups, on ones that I feel like have the most potential, that are targeted cold. All the other ones, the cold, the warm, I think that those people will fall into place with passive online content.
Good. Thanks for your question, Paul. So we have a question from Karen. You mentioned and showed a lot of books, Dale Carnegie, Zig Ziglar. Which ones are your top books?
So 10X by Grant Cardone, he makes it really clear in layman's terms. The reason why I like him is we talk the same, I would say. So Brian Tracy and Dale Carnegie are absolutely amazing reads, but it's written kind of old person-y. And I apologize if I've offended anybody, but the text isn't there. So Grant Cardone tells you like basically the truth. It's, I don't care how much you think it's going to take to get that customer. It's 10 times that. And if you do 10 times that, it's guaranteed. The results are guaranteed if you 10 times your effort. The other one would be Gary Vee. He is the reason why I created my little brand, Montreal Sign Guy. He basically said, if people know who you are, your effort will be a lot less. So there are a ton of people who sell signs. I'll use Matthew Lavery as an example. We were at someone's house at a party, and he does all the social media for his company. On his own social media, there was nothing mentioning really he sold signs. He asked me what he could do. I told him, you do it for everyone else. Put it on your own social media. You sell signs, and he did it. You need to tell everybody and their grandmother you sell signs, and make people think of you. And when they think of signs, they think of your name. Even if you don't sell it, if you can promote signs and they think of you, they attribute you when they think of signs, you can gain momentum a lot quicker.
Perfect. And then just a reminder, if you do have a question, put it in the Q&A if you can find it, not the chat. But I will try to get to some that are in the chat as well. But I have one here from Mac Ends. How do you deal with relentless clients who want a $50,000 sign for a $15,000 budget and assume it's your fault when that's not possible?
So I have the benefit of working for a nationally known sign company. So a lot of the times our pricing is, well, it's always in line with our direct competitors. We do signage for Tim Hortons across Canada, not all of the locations, but some. So generally when people say, okay, well, you quoted me 50,000, I got a quote for $15,000. At a point, you need to tell yourself, it is not worth the argument. It is not worth you trying to prove to that person that they're wrong. Normally what I say, because I'd rather lose a customer and be transparent than try to cut my price or do something underhanded. It'll ruin your reputation. So I normally tell people, listen, we do signs for Tim Hortons. I know what it costs. We know what it costs. If someone's selling you a sign for $15,000, it's not apples to apples. I would encourage you to do your homework beforehand. I also normally say, if you can provide me the competing quote, our general term is we'll match the price. 9 times out of 10, the other quote is for something completely different. And then I can say, listen, you asked for a 67-foot light box, I quoted you 13 feet. You know, like I can sell you a 13-foot light box at this price, no problem. But at 67 feet, it's this. And then they realize, because you just said, I'll match the price. They have nothing to lose. They can still buy it from that person. And if they're not willing to show you the quote, it means they're lying or they have doubts already themselves.
Perfect, thank you. So another question here. Do you think sign sales can close deals purely online alone without client visiting the factory to sell across the country?
No, I don't think online sales is going to be ever solely responsible for our industry. I don't think that you need to go and shake someone's hand or elbow bump or whatever social distancing is now. You have to go and meet a person. You know, you can get the opportunity to meet that person online through Zoom or a webinar or whatever. You can get the opportunities to quote, but I don't think that someone will be comfortable signing a contract for $100,000 for a massive pylon without seeing you in person or visiting your shop or you visiting them or there being some sort of feeling of legitimacy. I mean, I wouldn't sign a contract for $100,000 if I didn't know that that company was vetted, the person I'm dealing with is competent, and there's only so much of that that can translate through video.
Thank you. So how are you contacting businesses to promote sales during this time?
So the truth is I'm not. I flat out refuse to directly, actively try to sell signage. I've basically, at the beginning of this, what I did is I posted sign photos. I created with Robert Blythe, a sign related project with our YouTube channel, Channel Letters and Coffee, and focused on the content and not the number. So I looked at it like I'm going to post as much sign content as I can. So I'm top of mind whenever people are ready to start buying signs. And I mean, it's starting to come back a little bit now, but I haven't actively gone out and approached someone I've never spoken to before. I believe it's in bad taste. I believe that it's not the right time. I believe even if at the moment they think they need signs, they might not have the budget, and it's not up to you to consider if they do or they don't. And even if they think they might have it, that might not be true. So for the moment, I've then approached my existing customers. I asked them if any of the projects I've already quoted are still ongoing, and through that has led to new business. I think that aside from talking to existing customers, new customers, it's in poor taste at the moment to do that.
Okay, so the next question is similar. So about cold calling. So just stopping into businesses, like maybe just in regular times, like not during this COVID, but when you see a sign is getting old or worn out, like what percentage of your time do you spend doing those types of cold calls?
So at the beginning of my career, I would drive around all day looking for signs that were beat up, companies that were missing signs, a sign that was unlit, and I would go and leave a business card. The truth is, even when you expect someone to come and visit you, you don't have more than 5, 10, 15 minutes for that person. So I found it a huge waste of time and energy going door to door to door and driving around looking for signs. What I did was actively become aware. Anytime I was going somewhere to see a customer, I would use my trajectory or my travel as the opportunity to prospect for new customers. So if I was driving from point A to point B, in between point A and point B, I would focus, okay, what of these businesses don't have a sign, which ones are broken down or whatever. So when I would be coming back, I could stop at those. So I didn't waste, there was no like wasted time. I was already driving by them both ways, either way. I could scan on the way there, and then I could stop it on the way back. And I think the amount of energy it takes to do that is huge. I think that it absolutely needs to be fit into your already planned daily schedule.
Perfect, thank you. So we have a few minutes left, and if we have any more questions, I encourage you to pop on the Q&A and ask Lee while we still have him here. Um, I just have a couple of questions
Sure.
for you, Lee, that I was just writing down. I mean, I think we're all in sort of the same boat in terms of, not the same boat, but a lot of us are from smaller companies, and a lot of our sales folk sort of transition into those roles naturally without sort of business backgrounds or sales
Mhm.
backgrounds. But what advice do you have for someone who's moving into a role, say from fabrication or design, into a sales role with no experience?
Lean on what you know. So if you've been building signs, the reason why at the beginning of my sales career I was successful despite being shy was because I knew what I was selling. So I would go to a meeting and I would often get the reaction of, "Oh, you're not what I was expecting." And I would look at them like, "What were you expecting? An old guy in a suit?" And I'm a kid in some sneakers. And I think that once you explain and you can show that you have all this knowledge, and the truth is, the success in sales is having the knowledge of what you're selling. So if you already know what you're selling, you don't really need to know how to sell. You just have to give them the information about the product, and you already have that. So you have to tell yourself, okay, I have the information that a salesman has to learn. I just have to learn how to give this to the person. So if you could say, okay, I'm not great at shaking hands and smiling, that's fine. Tell them why your product is so great. Why is yours better than that person's? Because your LEDs are this, because the wiring is this, because the extrusion is that. It's you have the information. Admit to yourself that I am a resource. This person needs my product and I know the product. And once you can do that, the success will come.
Perfect. And like on that note, you said that you, when you started out in the sales position, you know,
Mhm.
you were shy, you had your own
Yep.
insecurities and everything. And I think we could all sort of agree that it takes a certain level of confidence and charisma to be a salesperson in any capacity.
Mhm.
So, what advice would you have for someone who's like working on their interpersonal skills or just trying to gain that confidence?
So step out of your comfort zone and do it as often as you can. Robert Blythe approached me for channel letters and coffee, and I really didn't want to do it. I don't like seeing myself on camera. I don't like talking. And it took a few times to really fall in love with it. And now I absolutely love it. It's so fun. I get to talk to people. I get great insights. I'm building great relationships. And I think that you have to just not be scared to be bad at it for a while. You know, you have to admit to yourself that it's okay to not be great and be anxious and nervous and shy and just try it anyways, you know. And every time you do it and you're uncomfortable, it gets a little easier, because the truth is the people who do things they're comfortable with now struggle later in life. If you do all the uncomfortable things now, later on in your career when the projects are bigger and the stakes are higher, you're in your comfort zone. So take yourself out of your comfort zone now. If you don't like being on camera, put a webcam. Do this every day for 10 minutes in your house. Don't show it to anybody. Just talk into the webcam and then watch it. and then do it again tomorrow. And before you know it, you're going to find the comfort that you were so anxious about before, but you have to repeat it every day. You have to do something every day that just makes you really, really nervous, and it'll make you less nervous.
Awesome, thank you. So we have a couple more questions on here.
Sure.
Keep you busy. On LinkedIn, how do you connect to cold leads and improve your number of connections?
Okay, so this is embarrassing to admit. I used to just sit on my phone and just click add over and over and over again. Anytime I was in the car before I started the car, I would click it and I just add as many as I could until I got bored. That's how it started. And then after that, I focused on posting something personal. I found on LinkedIn, I do it a lot less now. LinkedIn people like personal stories. I get a lot more engagement from strangers when I post something personal, how I handled this or how this affected me, than when I post a picture of a sign. So I think that's something that if you're comfortable sharing is great because it makes you more relatable, human, and strangers like interacting with people when they feel like they're vulnerable. So all of a sudden it makes it less overwhelming. Like, oh, well, look, he admitted that was hard for him. This is less scared reaching out to him. And then every time someone would click like on something I posted, I would message that person, even if they were a stranger, thank you so much for liking my post. Let me know if you ever want to have coffee or chat. So it like literally posting and people would liking the post would give me the opportunity to open the conversation. Because every time I get a new connection on LinkedIn and I click accept, 2 seconds later, I get a generic, hi, my name is whatever, I do web hosting, blah, 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 I just delete the person. So I think that if you immediately reach out to someone without any sort of introduction, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Thank you. So we have a question here from an anonymous attendee.
Ooh.
Any tips on how best to get a new COO with zero sign experience up to speed on our industry, assuming we have already signed her up with SAC?
Yeah, so
anonymous for a reason.
we actually recently changed our installation coordinator from someone with many years of experience in the sign industry to someone who worked his entire career in the restaurant industry and knew nothing about signs. This person was in charge of installs for an ASBAR system all throughout Canada, basically putting in the sure shots. Whenever you click a thing, you get an exact shot of whiskey or whatever. And he was really eager. So I think the key for that was let him be engaged in any aspect of the industry. Let him go in the shop. Let him see a sign get painted. Let him see a sign get welded. Let him watch a CNC. Let him go on an install. You know, there are so many people who get hired with high expectations and who don't actually go on an install truck. They won't go on a crane. They won't go in the back and watch a CNC and see how it gets programmed and see how long it takes. You need to let them get immersed in it, because no amount of you saying, okay, well, it's like this, just let them learn, let them go in the back, let them experience it. Them experiencing the sign industry will benefit them more than you trying to explain to them what the sign industry is.
I think that's really valid too, because most of the people we do hire aren't from the sign industry.
Yep,
So
yep.
there's like in any position, right? You just have to find people who are willing to learn and
100
and enthusiastic. So perfect. Thanks for that question.
Mm-hmm.
We have another question from Alexandria. So where do you see yourself in 10 years? Do you have a future goal position or level to achieve in the sign industry?
I love sales. I love the sales aspect. I believe that I will be in sales for the rest of my sign career. I do ultimately, I believe in transparency. I do want to at some point be on the SAC board. I would like to be president of the Canadian Sign Association. I would like to be a Francois Lucier. You know, it's someone that he does what he loves. He's excellent at it, and he gives back of his time. And I want to leave the sign industry. I want to leave a mark at the end of the day. For me, my mark is achieved through sales because it's something I really enjoy. I love the personal aspect of it. But I believe that at the end of the day, whenever I retire, like say Keith Edwards, people will say he left our industry better than when he joined. And I think for me, that is extremely important. Maybe it's a millennial thing that I feel like I want to make a difference, but I definitely have, aside from like getting rich. I want to leave the industry better than I left, than it was when I came in.
Awesome. Thanks, Alexandria, for the question. Up to the last couple of minutes of the presentation, but I think it might have been a typo. A company that has numerous salespeople, should each salesperson spend per week on LinkedIn, or should one person in the company focus on making a great company LinkedIn page and all the salespeople simply repost the content? The individual salespeople spend that hour a week on prospect methods, on other prospect methods.
To give you some insight into our company, we're 4 sales reps, and each of us work completely differently. We have different goals. We have different target customers. One loves the restaurant industry, the other one the retail industry, the other one online. So for me, I think that it has to be an individual thing. I don't think that ultimately one person doing it for the company and then everyone reposting it is necessarily the best scenario. You know, like, I don't sell to restaurants well. You know, it's a different kind of customer. Retail is different than restaurants. It's different than online. I do a lot of commercial projects, architectural projects. If I'm posting nonstop, or if my company is posting channel signs for restaurants all day, it's not helping me with my target customer. So at that point, reposting that isn't really helping me in the least. It's helping us get projects that are beneficial, but something that I'm not interested in necessarily. And I think that if each person does their own directed posting or LinkedIn activity, I think that the company as a whole would see more return.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you everybody for the excellent questions. That was awesome. If you do have any other questions, feel free to contact Lee. He had his email up there on the presentation, and all these presentation slides and a recording of the presentation will be shared with the participants. So you can get Lee's contact information, ask him any questions that you have, or find him on LinkedIn or Instagram or anything like that. I know you guys are all really busy and it's 1 o'clock now, so I just want to quickly get to some upcoming events and webinars that we have through SAC and YPN. So if you're not aware, it's becoming a regular thing, but on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, we're doing a YPN Zoom meetup, which has been excellent so far. It's open to all ages. We have had people from across Canada and the USA join the calls, and they're really fun. I missed the last one, but I heard it was like just amazing. We had Carl from Sleek Science, our president, jump on the call, and I heard there was just a lot of really great discussion happening on that call. So I'm really bummed I missed it. But so that is probably going to become a regular Tuesday night thing going forward. And if you need any details on that, check us out on Instagram. We always post when we're going to be doing those. So those have been great. And then on Tuesday, June 2nd at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time, we are doing another webinar. SAC is hosting a webinar, Surviving and Thriving with Leasing in a Depressed Economy. So that should be a really great presentation on the SAC website like immediately after this. So, and then finally on June 4th at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Atlantic time. Sorry, I didn't put the other ones in Atlantic time. Breaking Barriers. So Women in the Industry Happy Hour. So that's an event that's going to be taking place. And same thing, the details for that and how to register will be posted on the website. So I just want to thank everybody for participating, especially thank Corinne and Hillary, and especially Lee for making this really fun, and it was such a great presentation, and thank you all for your wonderful questions. So thank you very much, everybody, and we are signing off.